What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. This week, I sit down with Gabby Bernstein. Guys, I can't even begin to tell you the impact this episode had on me and hopefully you as well. You see, Gabby has been on a spiritual path most of her life. It all started with her sitting by her mother's side, meditating in ashrams in upstate New York. She turned to spirituality on and off throughout her teens and early 20s and was a dabbler until her darkest hour. It was spirituality that saved her in October 2005 when she hit her rock bottom and then decided to get sober. And in this episode, we talk about that moment. We talk about that moment where she heard an inner voice tell her that if she gets sober, the universe will reward her. And now she reaches countless people all around the world with her message, her multiple New York Times best-selling books, including #1 on New York Times bestsellers, speaking on stages and all over the globe. She's truly an inspiration, and you'll hear in this episode how genuine and real and honest she is. I hope that you guys can feel her energy like I did during this conversation. I even get emotional a couple of times, which you guys will hear as well, but I think you guys are truly going to love it. Now, before we get to the episode, I want to remind you guys that tickets for Growth Now Movement Live are on sale right now. Head over to gnmlive.com, check out the incredible speaker lineup, the movement makers, the entertainment, and so much more going on at this event. If you are somebody who is truly looking to level up their life in all areas, whether it's business, whether it's spiritually, whether it's your relationships, this event is for you. Head over to gnmlive.com, get your tickets today because tickets will go up soon. I really hope to connect with you guys there in person. Thank you guys so much, and I cannot wait to see you there. Now, without further ado, let's get to the episode with the incredible Gabby Bernstein. Gabby, welcome to the show.
So good to be with you.
Yeah.
So nice.
This happened so quickly, and I'm so excited. Obviously, Natalie introduced us, and I've followed your stuff. My girlfriend's a huge fan of your stuff, and so just really excited about the conversation because the new book, Super Attractor, I've been able to kind of graze over it. I just received it this morning, actually, but just really excited to dive in and learn more about kind of the path that you're on now. Obviously, we know a little bit about your past, but why don't we start with who is Gabby today, and then we'll unpack how you got there.
Oh, I like that. Let's start there. Gabby today is a much happier, much well-oriented being. Today I am a mom. My baby turns 1 year old in 3 days. Can you believe that?
Which is amazing.
3 days. My son Oliver's 1. I'm a mom. I'm a spiritual entrepreneur. I have been a spiritual teacher and lecturer and author for the past 15 years. Very, very proud of the work I do. The work I do is, I hate those people say like my work is my life or anything, because it's not. I have a beautiful, rich life beyond my work, but my work is such a big part of my life, and it's my mission. It's my mission. It's my purpose. So it fuels into everything, because it's also what I teach is what I live. So it's very intertwined. And if I'm not living what I'm teaching, then I might as well just, take the microphone and drop it. Right. Yeah. So today, the Gabby today is healthy, happy, more safe and secure than I've ever been, more confident than ever before. And I can say that because I've done a tremendous amount of personal growth and spiritual work, and I'm very, very proud of it. Probably what I'm most proud of.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because obviously the spiritual world is something that I used to have a spiritual coach, and I really kind of dove in when I needed it most, and it's a journey that I continue to go on. But what does that even mean? Like, how do you even start that process in your life? Because I think it's interesting, right? I think we're in a world now where religion used to be a big thing, and now it's kind of falling by the wayside. I just read an article that millennials are leaving church and not returning, and all these things. Spirituality is kind of in line with that. So, how did you even begin that process into spirituality?
Well, I was brought up with a mother who was a meditator, a yogi. Because my mom would walk into her bedroom very stressed out, and then I would smell incense and hear mantras, and she'd walk out very different. I was brought to ashrams and named by the gurus and given the gift of a spiritual relationship of my own understanding. My mom didn't force her beliefs onto me. She just shared them.
Sure.
So having that foundation was crucial because the seed was planted at a very young age without in any way having to, I don't even think she consciously was trying to teach me anything. I think she was just living her life, and this is what we do. That seed being planted really saved my life ultimately, because when I got to college and in my early 20s, I was very, very committed to trying to prove myself to the world. I had a belief that the outside world's perspective of me was going to be what was good enough, was going to make me feel good enough, was going to make me feel worthy. In that belief system, I started to become very addicted to that outside approval. So much so I started my first business at 21, and I was representing nightclubs as a publicist. I started a PR company.
Wow.
Yeah. And so you can do the math, running a PR company at 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, all the way to 25, representing nightclubs, having access to every club, walking the door, became addicted to work, addicted to romance, addicted to the scene, and then worst of all, addicted to cocaine and alcohol. Mainly the cocaine is what really took me down.
Sure.
But it was my spiritual faith that saved my life, because I had this stack of self-help books next to my bed that I would read when I was coming down from drugs. It's pretty classic.
Yeah.
And I remember, and really I got sober on October 2nd of 2005. I was sitting on the floor of my studio apartment coming down and staring at that stack of self-help books and thinking, this is far from my reality. And that moment I said a prayer. I said, God, universe, who's ever out there, I need a miracle. Then I heard this intuitive voice, literally an inner dialogue, say to me, get clean and you will live a life beyond your wildest dreams. Mm-hmm. That was the day I got sober 14 years ago. I've been almost 15 years ago, exactly. And I've been sober ever since. That sobriety path re-engaged my spiritual faith, gave me so much purpose. Very quickly in my early recovery, I started speaking publicly about what I was going through, giving talks, giving workshops. Very quickly, that became my life's path.
Yeah. Now, it's crazy because I think a lot of us hear that internal voice or that spiritual voice, and we ignore it.
Yes.
And then it keeps showing up, and we ignore it. What was it about that moment where you were like, okay, I'm listening?
I think that anytime we want to create change in our life, we have to want it. I wanted to be healthier. I wanted to get out of the cycle. That slight willingness was enough to get me to the place where I said that prayer and to get me to say yes to that prayer.
Yeah. And so what did that look like? Now you're breaking free. You're now sober. You're no longer into drugs and alcohol and all these other things. How did you maintain your business? Did you completely shut it down? Like, did you remove yourself? What was that looking like?
It was about a year and a half transition out of that business. But like any entrepreneur, sometimes you have to hold on to your day job until you can get your passion project. So what I did was really interesting. Because I was the owner of the business, I started to just change the type of clients that I was representing. So I started representing. At the time, there was this restaurant in New York City called The Pump. It's now called Dig In. But I started representing The Pump. It was like a health food restaurant, and I represented a doula. And so I started doing PR for brands that were more wellness oriented. Now, what was so genius about that at the time, and I knew I was doing it, was I was also cultivating a media list of wellness reporters, which would come really in handy when I was out doing my own work. So having that PR background, which by the way, I was completely self-trained as a publicist. I had a theater degree, so I had no degree
Wow.
in public relations. I just knew how to sell things. I knew how to figure shit out. I knew how to just make things happen. So, and I'm very good at selling something if I believe in it, because I don't actually sell. I just share.
Mm-hmm.
I don't sell. I have tons of emails and share, social and all these things that I put out about all these programs I have and all these books that I write, but I never sell. I don't have to sell anything. It's so easy. I just have to talk about it because I love it so much. And that's a really important message for any entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah.
But anyway, to get back to the where I was at. So I was one of those people that was really happy to get clean. And that's, some people are just pissed about it and, drag their feet. But I was psyched to be sober because I just finally felt better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously the drugs and alcohol were making you feel like shit. Like the reality is we have to understand how our body is feeling at any given time, and it's interesting to hear this journey because I think about how it just became your purpose and your passion. You started to talk about what you were going through and that kind of stuck. And that's what kind of built what you do now. Right. And so it's kind of what I've done. Right. So about 5 months before I launched this podcast, my mom lost a 20-year battle to opioids. And this podcast originally was supposed to be about entrepreneurship, and it quickly became about overcoming adversity, self-love.
Wow.
How do you find happiness? And that is what made it my business. That's why I speak all over the country now. And
good.
I think that's why it's taken off. So what do you say to somebody when they feel like they're forcing something in their life instead of listening to what feels right? Does that make sense as a question?
Yes, absolutely. I wrote a whole book about it. It's called Super Attractor. So yeah, in my book, I really drive home this message that when we're forcing, we're out of alignment with the natural order. We're out of alignment with the voice of our intuition, inspiration, God, universe, spirit, whatever you want to call it. I don't care what you call it. I just care that you call upon it. So if you're pushing, controlling, trying to make things happen, thinking it's your will, that's your way, then you are definitely making things harder for yourself. It's one of the biggest blocks to being a super attractor. Being a super attractor means that you are at ease, you are relaxed, your highest vibration is joy. You lean towards joy no matter what. Even in the most difficult times, you have the capacity to look for the joy. The energy of a super attractor is magnetic. It's someone who can think it and it will be. Someone who's patient in the knowing that what they desire is on the way, and it may come in a form that's different, but it will be far better than what they may have expected. So when we are in that energy of trying to push or control or make things happen, we are misaligned. We are blocking the magnitude of that super attractor power.
Yeah. So how do we get aligned? What's that look like?
There's some really powerful lessons in my book that I'll share with you today. The first one, and this is excellent for your listeners, the first one's one that people can use for the rest of their life all day long, teach your children, do it all day, make it something that's a habit. And it's called the choose again method. So ultimately, we have these fear-based thoughts that are on repeat. And those fear-based thoughts that are on repeat become belief systems. They become truth to us. They become who we think we are. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm lacking. I'm lacking. I'm lacking. I'm unworthy. I'm unworthy. I'm unworthy. And we repeat these belief systems over and over to the point where they become our reality, and we continue to attract more of that energy and experience into our life. So the way to undo the habit of attracting those negative patterns is to undo the belief system. So the first step is to notice that belief system, notice the thoughts that continue to show up over and over again. And in step one, you also notice how they make you feel. So those fear-based thoughts are making you feel low vibration. They're making you feel angry. They're making you feel frustrated, usually just apathetic, pissed off, whatever it is. The second step is to forgive yourself for having the thought. Now, this is the most profound step, because if you look at the fear-based thought and you say to yourself, I forgive myself for having that thought, what you've immediately done is decided that that thought isn't who you are, that that thought is no longer true for you. It's a thought that you've been thinking, but it's not you. So forgiving yourself for having the thought, you could also just forgive the thought altogether. Even if that doesn't resonate yet, you can even just say it out loud. I forgive myself for falling into that thought again. Then the third step is fun. It's choosing again. It's reaching for the next best feeling thought, reaching for the thought that is general enough that you believe in it, but more positive than the last thought. So reaching for a thought, you've just gone through a lot with your mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
And reaching for a thought like this terribly difficult experience has given me really great purpose. And I'm going to save lives because of it. Yeah. And my mother's going to work through me. She is. And this is part of my soul's choice and purpose in life, to show up and rise up. And, I can see you're very moved by that.
Yeah.
I can see it in you deeply. So it's empowering. It takes a fear-based story that's extraordinarily, we went for a big one right there, right? So we just went in for a big one. We didn't play small with that. This wasn't about eating too much chocolate. So you can see right now in that moment, in seconds, you started to think your way into higher vibration and a movement and an energy within you. And that energy is what is making this podcast such a success. That energy is what's allowing things to, for us to get on the call within 48 hours, So that energy is moving. So that's the choose again method. And I recommend people apply it in any corner of their life, no matter how difficult things are.
Yeah.
Particularly when things are really difficult.
No, and I love that. And it's so true. And obviously it was 4 years ago that she passed away. And I talk about this and I go, I realized that was the worst moment of my life, but without that worst moment of my life, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now.
100%.
I wouldn't have had, a handful of people reach out to me and say, because of you, I decided not to kill myself. And
correct.
All these crazy things. And going through that for me has allowed me to take everything else in stride. Like stress is very kind of fleeting for me. I'm not saying I'm perfect. Don't get me wrong. My girlfriend was going to kill me a month ago because my stress level was super high. But at the same time, it allows me to let things roll off and stay in that positive state. Do you think that people have to experience that low moment like you've experienced and then me to then kind of overcome, or can they create it on their own?
I think that there's this quote that I give often. It's a Rumi quote. The wound is the place where the light enters you. The reality, Justin, is we're all wounded. Not everybody has a loss of a mother because of opioids. Not everybody has a drug addiction or a childhood trauma. But being alive today means in some form we are traumatized. And I don't mean to sound doomsday. I want to sound empowering about it. So we all have experiences from our life that have been challenging, even if they're seemingly insignificant. I want to give people honor their experiences, no matter what they may be. Maybe it's that, everything was working out great and then you're 30 and all of a sudden you blew your back out, or, whatever it may be.
Right.
Or someone told you were stupid at 10 years old. So we've all got stories that have this repetitive pattern. And that's what trauma does, is it, until we release it, until we unwind it, until we reprogram it mentally and physically, because it's a somatic experience, we'll be in the pattern. We'll live in the pattern. We'll believe we are the pattern. We'll believe that we are constantly a stressed out person, when actually that's not the natural state of who we are. It's just the pattern that we've fallen into because of the energetic disturbances and the mental disturbances. So practicing something like the Choose Again method is a really big first step to undoing those patterns. Because even if you don't believe it yet, really, I want you to choose again, to choose something you believe in. So, I say in the book, the key to feeling better is just to decide to stop feeling bad.
Yeah.
But that's really offensive to somebody who is like, wait, I'm depressed, or I just lost my mother, or what, but I can speak to it really authentically. I went through 7 months ago, I was diagnosed with postpartum depression, anxiety, and insomnia. And in my darkest moments, I was living the Choose Again method. I was choosing to decide each day to lean into what could be possible. Lean into the fact that I had the possibility of doing, taking advice from people I had never thought of, or that I slept an extra hour the night before, or that I had a nice soup waiting for me for lunch. Just just reaching for the next best feeling thought.
Yeah.
And at times when you're dealing with mental illness, it's really hard. So I want to be real about that. And I recommend if you have any mental illness that you get psychiatric support as quickly as possible. But nonetheless, even just thinking to yourself, I can get psychiatric support, or I can call this hotline, or I can call 911. That's a step. That's choosing again.
Yeah, for sure. No, and I love that. And I was going to ask you, how has being a mother changed you and everything that you're building? Because look, like you have a massive brand. Like you say your name somewhere and people are like, oh yeah, I know her. Like this is this massive brand. What's it look like now as a mother of about a 1-year-old, soon to be a 1-year-old in a couple of days, right? And how is that changing your life? And obviously you've had that moment of postpartum depression, and how were you able to overcome that whole thing?
Well, my son has changed my life in countless ways. He is a gift, not only in that I have life to care for and I have a person I can support into becoming a very positive, empowered human, but his presence has given me the opportunity to go deeper in my own personal growth and healing. Because when you decide to have a child, you decide to heal. A lot of people don't. A lot of people don't do it. They run from that calling and ultimately instill their own past problems and traumas and onto their children. And that's something that I want to talk about a lot, because I want to help people feel empowered by the possibility that they can heal themselves and therefore have a major positive imprint on their children. So my child has just activated my personal growth far more than I could have ever imagined. Having been in the experience of postpartum depression and anxiety, I was given the gift of understanding mental illness on a whole new level, because we're living in times where mental illness is serious. It's life-threatening. When things speed up, it just takes the biochemical issues and just exacerbates them, because we're already feeling traumatized and triggered all the time. And then, just everything else that's happening in the world is just bringing it to the surface even faster. So having a public platform, having the opportunity to be a voice in a big way to speak on behalf of personal growth and spirituality, I'm very proud to say that I've recovered from mental illness so that I can live to tell my story, how my spiritual faith merged with medical intervention, how we shouldn't be too spiritual to take medication if we need it, how we have to trust that God is in the medication, God is in the doctors, God is in the guidance and the wisdom and the step-by-step planning. But then also, if we're going to take the path of a medicated route, that we have to use it as an opportunity to go deeper in our personal growth and our therapy and our spiritual faith. So the gift there has been given the opportunity to really, really respect and honor and guide people. Now, I'm not a guide for people with mental illness, but I can be an inspiration to say that don't be too proud to get help.
Yeah. I love that you called it a gift as well, and I think that's really kind of what you're talking about now is like these moments are a gift. And sometimes we have to do the work that we have to do to figure out why it is a gift or what's happening in this moment. Now, I was forwarded an email you sent out, I believe this morning. Let me pull it up really quick.
Somebody forwarded you my email. How nice.
Yeah. It was my girlfriend forwarded me the email and it was your birth story. And you had mentioned how when you saw your son, you said, I know you.
Yeah.
And how you were connected for many lifetimes. And in your book, you talk about angels and past relatives guiding you through this process. How is that all connected? And I would love to dive in and talk about it. I haven't read the chapter yet and I can't wait.
Yeah, you can skip ahead. I don't want other people to skip ahead, but you can. I believe you can. But don't skip ahead if you're listening. Read the whole book. So actually, no, read the whole book. Don't skip ahead, because I think it sets you up to receive that information.
Yeah.
So I've written 7 spiritual books, but this one, I was ready. The world was ready. It was time that I could push that metaphysical envelope more. So what I did was just came out with it. I came out with what I've always known, what I've always believed, what was true to me. But as a teacher, my job isn't to tell you this is what it is. My job is to just crack you open to what that spiritual relationship means to you. So I'm very, very forthcoming throughout the chapter that this could be an ancestor, this could be an angel, this could be a guide, this could be just the voice of your higher self. It's the voice of your higher self. Mm-hmm. So or the voice of intuition, if you want to call it that. So my chapter is called Lift the Veil. And then there's another chapter about spiritual guidance. There's 3 or 4 chapters that really go deep into this, okay? But one in particular. And what I share about is how there's that invisible guidance that's always available to us. And when we tune in and we start to pray and we start to meditate, or we set intentions, whatever we call it, we start to open up to these subtle frequencies of support that are around us, within us. The guidance of teachers that have been deceased, the guidance of your mother. Your mother can be very present in your life if you welcome her presence. The guidance of another deceased family member, or even an angel. And these spirit beings, their sole purpose is to guide us, to help us bridge our thoughts from fear back to love, to help us feel more connected, more aligned, to support the decision making. Because often we think we have to make all the decisions, but we can ask for help. We can ask for signs. I give lessons in the book about how to ask for signs, and everybody writes to me and says, oh my God, I got my sign. Oh my God, I got my sign. It's inevitable. Building that kind of relationship with a guide of your own understanding, even if it's simply your intuition or your inner voice, is what will make you feel more certain, less fearful, more faithful, will help you be patient in attracting what you desire.
Yeah. It's interesting. We had talked before I hit record about a friend of mine who is plugged into this world. And he can see things and feel things and everything in between. And I'll try and tell this story briefly without saying who he is, because he doesn't talk openly about it. But I had a dream one night about me being stressed out about my live event. This was actually I had it last year, and it was a sold out event. It was great. But the dream was about that. And my mom walked into the room in this dream. Now, whenever I dream about my mom, I know that she's dead in the dream. Like, it's never like, oh, we're just whatever. I know that she's dead. And I started crying when I saw her in this dream, and she walked up to me and hugged me, and she's like, why are you crying? You've done an amazing job. And then I woke up.
Nice.
And the next day I was with my girlfriend and her 2 kids, and we went and we saw my friend, and I got a text. I was in the same room as my friend. This is the part where I have to kind of dance around so people don't know who he is. So I was in the room with my friend, and I got a text from him, and he goes, oh, it's a family trip today. Your mom's with you.
Yeah.
And he had no idea I had that dream the night before. I actually just got chills telling you this story.
Yeah.
He had no idea I had that dream before. And every single time it just hits home. Whenever I need it, he gives me a little nudge. Like,
that's
look,
right.
This is like, life is happening for you
That's
right now. Right. And so how do you truly pass that on to other people when they don't necessarily, I know you talk about your inner voice and stuff like that, but how do you communicate that to others that aren't fully understanding of it when they are depressed and when they are going through that?
Right. Well, when we're going through depression or we're going through a difficult time, that's when we would want to rely on spirit most. Developing this kind of connection in moments when we're feeling good or we're feeling inspired is very valuable, because then when we have those difficult moments, we know where to turn. I also say that I write books for the willing. I don't think anybody listening this far into our interview would be here right now unless they were willing.
Right.
Because if you weren't willing, you would have either not even listened to it, or you would have stopped at 2 minutes. So I trust that whoever comes to these books or to this work is willing to perceive the world in that way, that they're on a spiritual path, whether they realize it or not, whether they've named it or not, that they're ready to really wake up to an inner life and the spiritual connection of their own understanding, is what I like to say. That's 12-step language, the spirit of your God of your own understanding, because it's just the most generous way to help people, because you don't have to make it theirs.
Right.
Yours isn't theirs, theirs is their own. So they wouldn't be here talking about spirits and angels and listening still. They would have stopped by now.
They're like, what a bunch of weirdos. Like, what are they talking about?
No, but also I think the world's waking up to it. I mean, being spiritual is the trend. I definitely agree with you that millennials are far more spiritual than they are religious. Not that there's anything wrong with religion, because religion is another gateway to spirit, right? So however you get there doesn't matter.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I grew up in the church. My grandfather was a pastor, and, I'm a believer and Christian and all those things. And so look, I'm open to whatever people believe in, right? And
doesn't really matter how you get there. It matters that you get there.
Yeah. And I love that. And so what is the purpose of your work? Like you talk a lot about finding your purpose and living your purpose. What's the purpose of your work, do you believe?
The purpose of my work is to crack people open to their spiritual connection and to help them let that connection guide their path towards healing, towards purpose, towards freedom.
Yeah. So, obviously you've written many books, multiple New York Times bestsellers, right? Like number
Yes.
one, killing the game, like really like insane. And so you've written this new book, Super Attractor. Where did this come from? Like, where do you come up with this? When I think about content, it's easy for me to sit down and record a podcast, right? But when you talk about writing books, where does it come from? Is it coming from deep inside of you, or?
I don't write books for what I think other people need. I write books for what I know I need. And I used to think I wrote my books for my reader. I actually write them for myself. And then I know that if it's serving me, it will serve others. So this book I wrote because I wanted to feel good. I was coming out of another stressful period of my life, and I was wanting to just feel good. I wrote this book while I was pregnant, so it was really joyful to write this book. I was really connected to God, really connected to Spirit, feeling my son wrote it with me in many ways. I dedicated this book to my son, Oliver. This is his book. I wanted to feel good. And as a result, this book is making hundreds of thousands of people feel really good.
I love it. So, obviously with this podcast, I get to talk to some of the most successful people in the world, however you want to define success. But my question for you is, how do you define it? And what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
I measure my success based on how much fun I'm having.
I love that.
I meditate to feel centered. I exercise because that changes my energy and my mood. I try to make time daily to put my phone down, not look at it, and just be present with my son. That's fun. That's really fun. I cook daily too, which is really joyful for me. That brings spirit through me. And I create daily in some form or some way. I'm creating, and that's so joyful for me.
Yeah. So what's on the horizon? What's next for you? What can people look forward to beyond the book?
So much. Many more books. I'm writing another book right now for Audible. It's an Audible experience. And then I'm thinking very deeply and intently about my book after that. I am hoping I will be pregnant again. I'm not even saying hoping. I intuitively and psychically know that I have another baby coming to me. So that's really on the horizon. When we speak next, hopefully I will share I'm pregnant. Being a mom is fab. I can't wait to have a friend for my baby.
Very, very cool.
Yeah. And then, I'm not really goal oriented anymore. I used to be, but now I'm just very trusting and faith, knowing that if I'm having fun, that I'm being guided to the next right action.
That's awesome. That's super exciting to pay attention to. And I'm excited for you when the next one does come, know, and I can tell you this, like I said, I'm dating a girl with 2 kids. They're 9 and 6. And when there's 2 of them, it's a whole different world. So it's beautiful in a sense, and also chaotic and all the crazy things in between. But it'll be good for you for sure. So what's all the important stuff? How do people find you? Where do they get the book? What's all that stuff?
So the book, everything is at gabbybernstein.com. There's so many cool things going on in my world right now. Check it out. There's blogs, there's free content, there's challenges, there's so much great work. There's courses, but most importantly, if you feel inspired, I would say start your journey with the book, because this book is, I'm blown away by the way that it made me feel as writing it and reading it. Reading it in the audiobook reading was just deeply moving for me. Just felt reignited by it. So I just believe in it, and I hope it serves countless souls. Head over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, whatever it is. But I'm excited to hear new people on that journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like I said, I literally just opened it this morning when I got home. But you give samplings of what the chapters are all about. And I'm not a huge reader. People that listen know this. So I'm not a huge reader, but just reading that, I'm like, I know I'm going to be reading this book.
Listen to the audiobook. Listen to the audiobook. I always read my books. So if you're not a reader, listen. It'll be very joyful to listen while you're driving or working out or whatever. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. So obviously,
I hope it brings you closer to your mom.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
It will.
I feel at times that I'm super close. And there's certain times where I feel not as close. And so I'm excited to dive in and see where it takes me for sure.
When you're in a stressed state, you're not as close, but when you're in that very relaxed state, that's when you can hear her.
Yeah.
That's why this book is going to help you get closer to her.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for writing it.
Yes.
I'm excited to dive in for sure. So obviously this podcast is called The Growth Now Movement. So I wrap up every single episode with this one question, and that is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
My biggest moment of growth. God, there've been so many. I guess I'd have to say this up-leveling that's happened in the last 6 months as a result of really being at the darkest moment of my life. To come out of that was, I can look back and say that was an up-leveling of my soul.
I love that. Gabby, thank you so much for not only just coming on and sharing with my audience, but just being who you are and delivering to the world your message and just sharing openly. I think it's something that's needed, and obviously you're impacting so many, and I can't wait to see where it goes for you in the coming years. And just thank you so much.
Thank you, Justin. You're so awesome.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week.